I think there's opportunities wherever you see them, whether that's in beauty or whether that's in something else. Like, again, I think if you really believe in what you're doing and you feel that there is a need for what you are creating and that the world doesn't have it yet, or they don't have it in the way that you think they should have it, and you believe in it and you can convince your team to believe in it and it works, then you can get other people to believe in it too.
Hi and welcome to Female Founder World. It's your host, Jasmine, and today I'm interviewing Sasha Plavsic. She's the founder of Ilia Beauty, which is a clean, skin-centric beauty brand that has been around for about 10 years now. They've been a pioneer in the clean beauty space, so there's a ton of great stuff that we can learn from this conversation. Hope you enjoy it. Well, Sasha, welcome to the show. Generally, I love to just get all of our guests to tell us a little bit about their company in their own words and a couple of milestones or insights that can help people understand where the company is at in its kind of what phase you're in your growth and where you're at in the founder story.
For sure. Super excited to be here. And yeah, I'm Sasha Plavsic, the founder of Ilia, of which the company today is actually 10 years old. Or I shouldn't say today. It happened this year.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. I know it's our 10-year anniversary this year, which is unbelievable. The concept to mind came around 2009. And at that time, I was looking for products that were going to be more gentle to my skin, that had ingredients that were hopefully going to actually help heal my skin as I suffered from a lot of skin concerns, including reactive skin, which was more acneic. And I felt that when I looked on the market for these products, the marketing wasn't always backing up what was actually in there, or they were maybe so green or so organic and natural that the efficaciousness of the product wasn't there either. So I really felt like there was a big gap in the industry back then to find something in between that was more niche, indie, boutique, especially in the makeup space. And that was really transparent for customers. So fast forward, here we are. And our mission as a brand is to protect and revive the skin. And that's really where it started for me with my own skin. And we look to make the skin look and feel alive. That's what the end goal is. So there's a starting point and an end point and a bunch of stuff in between. We like the customer to wake up her skin with our products and make up the rest. And they do that through skincare powered ingredients. A lot of our products are skin centric and very focused on benefiting the skin immediately and then over time as well. So I think overall we're known in the space to be a clean makeup brand that is a hybrid with skincare. And our customers have really come to trust our products. We generally in the space are going after a wider demographic. There's a lot of people that will target a Gen Z customer or perhaps be more definitive in who they're after, whereas we really look to aspire towards the millennial and her mom. Today we are nearly 100 people and have had rapid growth over the past 3 years specifically. I think that attributes itself to a rebrand that happened in 2020, right before the pandemic, a great product launch, a capital raise, and a great team. And it's really set us on our way today.
Amazing. I use all of your lip products. That's how I kind of found Ilia to begin with. And my background is as a beauty editor. So I'd kind of heard of the brand, through PR and that kind of thing. And then I also noticed that you guys recently relaunched or added to like your existing line of those lip tints, which are, I think, like my favorite of your products for sure.
Yeah. We just that was a 10-year anniversary product. We launched with our tinted lip conditioners back in Vancouver in Canada. And we had 6 shades in that range. And the formula had slightly shifted over the years. And not only that, there were new ingredients that we were able to work with to incorporate and kind of bring everything up to par to where the rest of our products are today. And things evolve over a 10-year period. So we had to evolve that product. And we had a recent launch. It's called Balmy Tint now and is doing really well. It's kind of reinvigorated the lip category for us, which I hate to say was a little bit murky for the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's a beautiful one. I use, for anyone listening who wants to try it, I use the color Memoir. That's kind of my favorite. It's like a lighter, more natural tint color. It's really pretty. So before we dig into some questions about the business and how you guys have grown and what's been working for you, could you just also tell a little bit more about your own professional background? I think when I was researching, I saw that your background is in maybe branding. You had a little bit of beauty experience, but not all that much before you started Ilia. So how did you come to business, like from a professional background?
My background was in branding. So I did do graphic design and web design, and I specialized in typography at college. I went to school at the London College of Printing in London, where I did a BA honors. And then I worked in a branding firm over there and had experience with magazines, and then specialized in working with founders in actually finding new footing for a brand that usually is existing for a period of time, and then helping to give it an updated, refreshed look, while still holding on to the core values of the brand or helping to redefine them further. And so I think that played an incremental role in being able to start my own brand. And as a founder, I believe we all have different talents. If I speak to other founders or watch what they do, we all kind of have our areas that we know we're good in. And I think it's really important to recognize where you're good and then where you're not. And I was really good in that area, so it made it easy for me to start creatively thinking about the vision, the products, what direction I wanted to go. And today it's still my strongest area. There are many areas that I'm much weaker in, where I've had to hire great people to come on board and help support the growth of the brand, and other areas that I don't have experience in. So I think it's my professional background helped, but there comes a point where you also need more.
So now, Ilia is stocked in Sephora. You have a 100-person strong team. But can you take us back to when you first had the idea? I know it's, 10 plus years ago, but how did you really go from, you've got the concept, your background is in branding, you probably haven't formulated or, worked out the logistical side of producing a physical product. How did you find the answers to those kind of questions that you would have had to get this off the ground?
To starting a company?
Yeah. So in terms of like actually formulating the product, finding suppliers, like that logistical piece.
I think, there's definitely no roadmap when it comes to doing that type of stuff if you don't have the experience. I did have a very quick experience at Urban Decay Cosmetics, where I worked on some branding and helped them with a packaging rush, of which I think people thought maybe I had learned some things and got some contacts there, but not really. It did pique my interest. And from there, I worked with an aromatherapy company in Vancouver that I rebranded called Sage Natural Wellness. And I learned a little bit more about ingredients, but again, no contacts to kind of help me. I did go to some trade shows. I was recommended to go to one trade show, Cosmoprof in Las Vegas, of which it's so different today. But back then it was more of a place to be able to meet suppliers and packaging and labs. I did a lot of cold calling and just picking up the phone, trying to find labs, Googling. Google was a great resource to be able to just go after something and kind of put the pieces together. And if they were able to do what I wanted them to do, I will be open in saying that it was a real challenge, and no labs were able to do what I wanted them to do. I had 3 that failed in the formula for me, or that didn't want to do it. And then I met a woman who was really going to try and do this more natural or clean formula as it is known today, and take a risk on that. So I think when you're really committed to figuring something out, you generally will find the right people along the way, and you figure it out. I'm also a mom, and that certainly doesn't come with a book of instructions, and you kind of just have to figure it out along the way and make the best decisions that you can.
I was doing a little research on before we chatted, and one of the things that I found really interesting about your story is that, you were really selective and strategic about the wholesale partners that you originally started with. And that was based on, I think, what your vision for the brand was, but also what your capacity was to fulfill orders. I know that you're in Sephora now, but could you talk through some of the challenges about when you're a small brand and you're first getting approached by these big retailers, what some of the things are that you need to really consider?
I think, everybody's got to find their own way. And some people will start big, meaning they'll raise a decent amount of capital. They'll have a plan. They'll get a guarantee that they're going to get into a prestige beauty retailer like Sephora or a bigger box store. and they go for it. And I would consider that to be higher risk and something that I chose not to do because I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest, in the beginning. A lot of it was very experimental. And I had a much smaller minded approach to how, or maybe it was higher level and niche. Like my personal goal was to get into Colette in Paris, which is and was one of the greatest lifestyle stores in the world for a couple decades. Net-a-Porter was really big back in those early 2000s, like around 2010, 2011. It was booming. And Beauty, when they launched it, we were one of the first 6, and that was a huge accomplishment. And it did really give us eyes in the world to people, the editors, to me, that mattered. But no, it was not a huge volume driver. And so I kept it really small and was able to learn what I wanted to do along the way and make mistakes. And when you're really small, you can make mistakes and it doesn't hurt as much. When you get bigger and you make a mistake, it has a much bigger impact. So I think that was, that's just the pathway that I chose. But, we didn't really grow or get much bigger until roughly 2018. That's when we started to really grow. And the first 7 years were, if anything, a project or an experiment that, running like a $5 million business, which seems really big, but in the beauty space, it's so tiny. So I think, that was when we decided to raise capital in the end of 2018 and get more serious around it. And I started bringing in some people who really knew how to scale a brand. That's when we started to see things change.
Could you talk us through the rebrand and, what that was really all about? I noticed that the packaging changed a lot. It felt like a lot more, I think, like modern. What were you hoping to achieve with that, and what was the process?
Well, that was really an area for me that I felt comfortable in and totally uncomfortable because normally I'm on the outside looking in at what needs to be changed. And it's really hard when you created something and you're looking on the inside at the inside. It's actually you feel somewhat blind and like you can't see. But, we had the opportunity to grow with Sephora, or we had an opportunity with them, I should say, to explore growing. And they had been just like talking to us and reaching out, just to kind of tap onto the last question since 2012, of which we couldn't really afford to make the investment to go with them. It's a big risk, to put yourself out there. And if it really takes off, which is of course what everybody wants, you need to have the capital behind you to do it. So we got to a point where we raised that capital, and it became very clear to me as trends were starting to change that the branding that was very kind of high-end niche and subtle needed to be louder. And it didn't need to be louder with bright colors. It needed to be louder with a bolder logo. It needed to be louder just with the basic contrast of like dark brown and white. So I said, I think it's time for a change if we're going to really pop visually, which you need to do in today's world through ads and different, 360 integration for marketing, especially on social media. You need to be able to be visible. So I actually worked with a firm in New York, and they helped me go through the process of being able to do the rebrand, do the logo. And that was more the visual side. So a lot of our existing packaging, we redecorated it. Like it took 2 years to move through the old stuff. We only recently moved through it, and I think some of it's still out there. And then we redecorated it and went for a rebrand, of which we timed it with the launch of our Super Serum Skin Tint SPF 40, which is our number one selling product, or one of our number one selling categories. And with that, I think it really paved the way. But to me, it was a bit of a perfect storm of doing a rebrand, launching an A+ product, having the dollars to spend on marketing, and then making the decision during the pandemic to actually put the pedal on the gas and really put ourselves out there digitally, because everybody was on their phone at home. I think where a lot of people chose to pull back, we chose to pull forward, and that new visual of who we were was much more visual for people to take in and recognize. And we started building some momentum from that point forward.
You mentioned there a couple of product launches, the Super Serum SPF Skin Tint. A lot of the people that are listening to the podcast will be on the verge of launching for the first time. Do you have any insights about what really needs to be considered to make sure that a new product launch can cut through in what is a very noisy online environment at the moment?
I think it depends on your world. It depends on if you're in makeup, or it depends if you're in skincare. It depends if you're in hair care. I actually don't think it does have to do with the product launch, but it has to start much deeper than that. Like, what is your point of difference to what's already on the market? And why are you there? I don't want to sound cold in saying this, but I believe there's so many beauty brands coming to market because if you do it right, or even if you do it okay, many can be quite lucrative. But if that's why you're there, what is the real truth or essence of your story? And, where I feel like we've had a point of difference is that I passionately sought that out, many years ago. And I really believe that if you want to be great in something, of which you probably will make many mistakes along the way, you have to really believe in what you're doing and ensure that you know what your point of difference is, in respect to those around you. Because what makes a great category is when everybody has their own point of difference. And sure, there will always be crossover, but that's what builds a category. So, we can't be the only people in this category, nor can another brand be the only brand in a prestige category. What builds that category, and clean is a building category considered to be relatively newer, is a nice mix of brands that find their point of difference. And I think that's the most important part. In beauty specifically, I think you need more innovation too. And what does it take to do that? And what is that? What is that to you?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There are so many new beauty brands launching all the time. Do you think that there's still space for new brands to come through and to innovate? Maybe not even in clean beauty, but where do you think those opportunities are?
I think there's opportunities wherever you see them, whether that's in beauty or whether that's in something else. Like, again, I think if you really believe in what you're doing and you feel that there is a need for what you are creating and that the world doesn't have it yet, or they don't have it in the way that you think they should have it, and you believe in it and you can convince your team to believe in it and it works, then you can get other people to believe in it too. And that to me is what takes a brand, to a much bigger place, because without that, customers know, and they can see through if you're just there, I think, to kind of collect a profit. They want to know, they want to be able to connect now more than ever with what brands are doing today.
You've mentioned team a little bit. I'm interested to know how, at different stages of the company, where were you focusing building that manpower or woman power? Which areas of the business needed the investment and needed more people at different stages of the company's growth?
Yeah, and you can say manpower. That's okay. We have many men on our team too, who identify as men, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's important too. Is to have a mix of that. But I think the business would call for when it needed more, and I had a tough time the first 5 years in the business. I was running it with my brother, and he's family and I love him, but there was a lot of challenges, I think, that came with that. And choosing your partners is really important. Some people don't need a partner. I think most people benefit from a partner at the right time. And where the business was 5 years into it, roughly, I was at a really hard time in my life personally. And I realized that if I wanted to take this business beyond a few million from where it was, I needed somebody who had the experience and understanding how to do that. And then specifically how to do that with Sephora, who was looking to explore a partnership and the opportunity of growing together. So I made the decision to bring on a CEO, and she is very experienced, usually in growing a brand, from a much bigger size to where we are today. And it took time, for us to even get to that size that she's used to working with. But what made, I think, all of it so nice is that when I was able to then focus on the product, and specifically if we were to divide the company with the CEO, I'm focusing more on the brand, marketing, creative, and product. And that's where I'm served best, especially with product and the vision. And I'm one of those founders that falls into that kind of classic bucket. And then she was able to focus on the business, the sales, part of the operations, digital aspects that we were all learning on. But by being able to support each other and split that business down the middle as it was really starting to pick up speed, and then hire leadership into positions that were needed. We didn't hire vice presidents or senior leadership until the brand started hitting around 10 million. It was, we were it took time to kind of get to that stage, but then it became more serious, and it was the best feeling to have such great experience around us and learn together and be able to lean on each other in each person's area of expertise. And the more that happened, the more I was able to keep going towards the product, of which I think, again, that's where I knew I was serving the company best.
In a really practical sense, what kind of things are you doing in a company of your size on a typical day? Like what does your calendar look like?
Probably like many other people's, with way too many Zoom meetings. I think, I'm in a great place of which there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm actually more with the business and where the business is going today than I used to be. I used to be so in the moment I call it with my hair on fire. I think my hair was on fire for several years, especially from like 2019 when I had my second kid through end of last year. My hair was on fire. And I think, because I used to run marketing, creative, and product, I was the person that was reported into, and it was too many departments and too many people at the end of last year. We brought in an SVP of marketing. So now she organizes that. For the most part, I have people do a creative review where they present up to me and there's certain ideas, and we do that a couple times a week. But I would say between different meetings that require me to be in the brand like this one, that are kind of more outward facing, to product development, to what's happening creatively, to certain business decisions, launch decisions, leadership decisions, all those types of meetings. And then listening to where things are. I went into one of the stores last week and connecting with a field team member and asking him what's working on the gondola and what's not, and hearing it from him and seeing things that you can't always see unless you're physically there. And that's one of the hardest things. As the brand gets bigger, it doesn't actually get easier. It gets a little harder because you're dealing with different things. And then you're feeling a little more, for the most part, you can't see all the way down. When you have 10 people, you can kind of see through every layer. 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, a little less, 50, a little less. Now we get to 100, and sometimes I still will just pick up the phone if I want to call somebody and talk, and kind of get to the heart of it. But it does get bigger. And to me, how do we ensure that we can still maintain detail, at every level as we keep growing?
Mm. And the last question that I like to ask everyone is just to share a resource. It could be a book, a podcast, community that you're a part of, something that's kind of helped you or supported you as you've grown your business.
Oh, I've been pretty solo. It's funny. I'm known in this industry as a kind of a hidden founder. And I think it's because I put my head down. A lot of people need to go out there and connect, and I have done that. And what makes today great is that you can do it more digitally, but I didn't do it aggressively. I think I really stayed behind the scenes and put my head down with my product and the company, and then my family. And I think, that you staying centered in yourself when you're trying to grow a business and staying connected to what you think matters, not what other people think matters, is really important. And a book that helped me, and this is like a little bit hippy dippy, but when I was 26 and I'm in my early 40s now, I read a book called The Diamond Cutter. And I used to do a lot of yoga, a lot of meditation. I spent way too much time in other parts of the world, in jungles with my eyes closed in a period of life. And The Diamond Cutter was about a Buddhist monk who was American, and he was a businessman, and he went to Tibet to become a monk, and that takes 22 years. But when he was there, halfway through it, he had a vision, and somebody else had a vision for him that he was going to become an amazing businessman. And he did. He went back to America, and he did it as a Buddhist. And what was really interesting about that is that the challenges, he actually chose to do it in the diamond industry, which is definitely somewhat convoluted at times. And to be dealing with an honesty and transparency can be a challenge in any business, but That one seemed to be especially challenging. So what was very cool to read about all that was that how you approach things in your mind, how you choose to problem solve. There's a mindset that was delivered in that book. And I would recommend for anybody starting a business or anybody working actually and maybe having challenges with their team to read it as you're blaming other people for your problems is not the solution. Being accountable for your actions, figuring out how to change a negative thought to a positive thought, which is hard and I still struggle with it. But how can you make the best of something when you're delivered something that you may not like? And it kind of had that mindset around it. And it's really helpful because if you're starting something, there's a lot of self-doubt. Like for anybody listening, it's the scariest thing to put yourself out there in the world and to wonder if it will work or if it won't. And just so you know, everybody probably feels that way. So getting over your own fear and not being afraid of who you are and maybe who you want to show is what I recommend in that book, The Diamond Cutter by Michael Geshe Michael Roach. That's what it is.
Amazing. That's a great recommendation. I said that was the last question, but I have a follow-up now. You talked about, staying centered, staying in your own lane, not being kind of distracted by what other people think. I think a lot of founders or people who are entrepreneurial struggle with that because they might have lots of different things that they're interested in and be like quite outwardly focused. Is meditation a practice that has helped you to remain that way? Or is it something that you intuitively as a person, like you feel like it comes naturally to you? Are there any insights that you can share for people who might be struggling with that?
I wish I had time to meditate, and I found bits and moments of it over the last 10 years, but with 2 young kids in the business, and then my own mental health or physical health, those are the things that take the attention. And if I physically move, I get more out of it than meditating. If I physically move and meditate, I'll get the most out of it, but I generally don't have time for that last part, the meditation. So my husband was an athlete, and his coach always had these sayings, and he said, you can do 1 thing great, and you can do 2 things good. 3, you do usually poorly. So when I think about that, I can do my job great and my kids good. And that's about it, and there's another quote that I'll throw it. It's from Coco Chanel. And I think there's enough time for work and there's enough time for love. There is no time for anything else. And that's true. When you're really growing a business, you do have to make sacrifices on what you choose to do and draw your boundaries in order to get to where you want to go.
That's great advice. Sasha, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Female Founder World. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to